D-May, Svingen, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason, Adam Vingen, Nick Frazier here with you. Derek and I are live out at Boomba's in Murfreesboro at 2839 Medical Center Parkway in Murfreesboro. So come out and see us. We will be out here all day. Chase and Big Joe sticking around, having a bite to eat. Jared Stillman will be out here from 2 to 6. And Jared Stillman's mood will largely depend on the outcome of the first game of the first round of the NCAA tournament. Louisville taking on Creighton. Tip-off in roughly 10 minutes out in Lexington, Kentucky. Joe Rexroad is there for the Athletic. So the Jared you get at 2 o'clock will largely depend on the performance of his beloved Cardinals coming up here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, do we have some games starting already? I thought I saw a game over there. That was women's NCAA tournament. It was Iowa versus, I couldn't see. I just saw the Iowa team. So I was looking at it like LSU versus Iowa. And wow. LSU is winning, I think.
So the
I was winning.
Oh, okay.
So
the NCAA men's tournament gets underway here in less than 10 minutes. Tip off at 11:15 between Creighton and Louisville. High Point in Purdue at 11:40. Montana and Wisconsin at 12:30. SIU Edwardsville and Houston at 1 o'clock. We will bring you all tournament updates throughout the day. And those, by the way, are presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by thenewcumberland.com, Twin Peaks, and Bet365. And, of course, I'm a little downtrodden today, Derek Mason. My beloved American University Eagles lost last night in the first 4 to Mount St. Mary's. I was hoping for the all-Vingen matchup of Duke versus American on Friday. Mount St. Mary's prevented that from happening. Duke is a 32.5-point favorite against Mount St. Mary's. I hope Duke wins by 50 points. So Mount St. Mary's, I didn't know much about you. Now I don't like anything about you. But we will continue to bring you NCAA tournament updates throughout the show. Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet's NHL insider extraordinaire, will join us at 1 o'clock. Willie Donick will also be along shortly. He's back at Bridgestone Arena preparing for the Predators game tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. Coverage, of course, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Puck drop at 7. Pre-game at 6. So, Derek, yesterday we spent a lot of time talking about Cam Ward. We continue to spend a lot of time talking about Cam Ward and what the Titans could do with the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. And I was listening to Kevin Clark's This Is Football podcast, and he was talking about ceilings and floors for the top prospects in the NFL. So that's what you're about to hear from Kevin Clark. But there's something at the end of this clip from Clark that I want you to focus in on. This was Kevin Clark talking about Cam Ward on the This Is Football podcast.
I'm going to give my ceiling and my floor. Cam Ward's ceiling is Patrick Mahomes, and his floor is if Patrick Mahomes were drafted by the Jets.
There was no caveat to the ceiling, just Patrick Mahomes.
Why would there be a caveat? I don't think that it's going to happen because he's not going to go to the best offensive coach of his generation.
Okay,
and he's not going to go to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Like, that's not going to happen. But style-wise, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but like the ability to do the basics. So, like, I go back to something that Steve Young said in this show a couple of years ago, which is that everybody talks about Mahomes as Superman, but really the brilliance is Clark Kent, the Clark Kent of it all. And the fact that he's able to do the basics over and over again, and that allows him the space to be Superman. I think that's important. I think Ward has the foundation to do the Clark Kent stuff perfectly, and then build the Superman stuff on top of it. The difference is Mahomes was able to do the Superman stuff immediately because of the infrastructure, because of what he had in the offense. Tennessee's just not going to have that. Not just the coaching, but the skill guys as well. It's going to take a while for the Superman to be reliable at the NFL level.
That was
wide receiver translator.
So before we get to the wide receiver
Mhm.
translator, so ignore the Patrick Mahomes stuff
Yes.
for a moment, because when we talk about, hey, this player could be Patrick Mahomes, people's antennae
Yeah,
go
people go
up, right?
crazy.
So it's less about that. It's more about what Kevin Clark said at the end about how Patrick Mahomes had the infrastructure. He had Andy Reid, he had Travis Kelce, he had Tyreek Hill. It was, for lack of a better word, easier for him to be the best version of himself because he had that infrastructure.
Mhm.
But then Kevin Clark mentioned at the end, Tennessee doesn't have that infrastructure. It's going to take longer for Cam Ward to find those Mahomes-like abilities, let's say, because of the situation he is going to presumably find himself in
Mhm.
once the NFL draft rolls around. So that's the question that I want to ask you, Derek, as well as everybody else at 615-737-1025. Do the Titans have the infrastructure to support Cam Ward and allow him to be the best version of himself sooner rather than later?
When you speak on, or when he speaks on infrastructure, what is he saying? Is he saying personnel, or is he saying the coaching staff that is in place so that he can maximize his full potential as a player? Because if he's talking about the roster, then they are trying to they're trying to breathe life into this roster. Um, and how do you breathe life into a roster? When you go out and you get a bunch of guys that are reliable, that's the start of it. You gotta change your diet up. You gotta change your diet up and start doing some different things. And removing things. Well, they removed some of that stuff over the offseason, and they added guys that would help the body instead of hurt the body. So from that standpoint, they are starting to do it. We are not going to know if it works until the season starts. So I understand that part. But I do see them, unlike, again, we talked about this yesterday, unlike the two previous regimes. I just think they went out and got guys that they thought would help, but those guys were injured the year before. So you were rolling the dice, and you rolled the dice, and you rolled them wrong, and you crapped out. Both GMs. One, it took a little longer than the other, but the last one, it was immediately. You going out and getting good players, but injured players. Well, this regime went out and got guys that they knew would be their day one, and more than likely would be their week 17 and 18 for them as well. So from that standpoint, I think they are sort of building an infrastructure around them from a personnel standpoint. Listen, they got a long way to go, but at least they've started off on the right foot. Now, when you talk about the coaching staff with the GM, because I'm going to make the GM, because he is an extension of the coaching staff, then I don't know. Because, first go around with Brian Callahan and his crew, it didn't look good. It did not look good whatsoever. But then you bring Bergonzi in here, who comes from a winning culture, and he's trying to do some of these things. So the jury is still out on that. So if they do go out and draft Cam Ward, I do believe Cam Ward he would be in a better space this year than he would have been last year had they drafted him.
So let's talk about what the Titans have done so far from a personnel standpoint. The biggest additions, literally and figuratively, have been on the offensive line.
Yes.
They spend a boatload of money on Dan Moore to play left tackle, which allows the Titans to shift J.C. Latham to right tackle. They bring in Kevin Zeitler to play right guard. So what's the most important thing a young quarterback or any quarterback needs? An offensive line he can trust. And again, on paper, this looks like an offensive line that Cam Ward, presumably, can trust. I remember Charles Robinson, I believe it was his appearance last week on Robbie and Rex Road, said the Titans weren't doing all of these things on the offensive line to protect Will Levis. They weren't doing these things on the offensive line to protect an old quarterback. They were doing it to protect a rookie quarterback. So offensive line-wise, it seems like the right mix. So perhaps that's a positive in terms of, do the Titans have the right infrastructure? Then we have wide receiver. Right now, that's a big fat X
Yes.
because you have Calvin Ridley and
No one else.
nobody else. And we'll see if the Titans bring in a veteran wide receiver. We expect them to draft a wide receiver. So that's a big fat X right now. Coaching is a question mark. And there have been texts. Every time we have this conversation, there are texts about why would we, or why should we trust Brian Callahan to develop a young rookie quarterback? He had a young quarterback in Will Levis, and he bombed. And I've always said, hey, Brian Callahan didn't do his best work last season, but it's entirely possible that Will Levis was beyond coaching, right?
Mhm.
We've talked about some of the plays that he made, the boneheaded plays he made last season. I think it was the first game of the season against Chicago. Brian Callahan tells Will Levis, you do not have to be Superman. Keep it simple. Let's get out of here with a win. And what does Will Levis do? The exact opposite. There's only so much a coach can do in that situation. So maybe Will Levis was beyond coaching in that sense. So right now, if you're asking me the question, do the Titans have the infrastructure to support Cam Ward? I think the answer is no right now,
Mhm.
but that could change with what else they do personnel-wise. But the question of the coaching is going to be there until the season starts.
And I don't think when you ask that question, at least right now, unless if somebody's just hyperbolic on one side or the other, I don't think there's truly a wrong answer, because if you look at what they're trying to do first and foremost with the offensive line, you can say, well, it seems like, on paper right now, and I know we've gotten in trouble before with looking at the Titans on paper, but on paper, because of what we've seen of these guys last year, that they were available, whether it be Dan Moore or whether it be Kevin Zeitlin, these guys were available. Peter Skoronski, he was available. J.C. Latham, they were available. So now you put all these guys together, and the expectation is what? That they will be available for 17, 18 games, and you will get a much version of the Tennessee Titans offensive line that you've seen in the last 2 years. So with that being said, you can say, well, yeah, they are starting to set up whoever the next quarterback is going to be with a good infrastructure. But you can also say, well, no, they're not. No, they're not, because we haven't seen these guys play together. So unless you are hyperbolic on one side or the other, I don't think there's a wrong answer. There could be optimism, in regards to you saying, well, I believe based upon what they've done in early free agency, that they're starting to put the infrastructure around them. But if I say, no, they're not, I can be right too, because we haven't seen it yet.
615-737-1025. Do the Titans have the infrastructure to support Cam Ward? If your answer is no, what more do you need to see to change your mind? Do the Titans have the infrastructure to support Cam Ward? 615-737-1025. We are out at Boomba's in Murfreesboro. We are here through 6 p.m. for all of your NCAA tournament action. It's Thirsty Thursday at Boomba's. Talls for smalls on draft beer all day. Tomorrow is Frozen Friday with $5 frozen drinks all day long. Also, Boomba's has a late night special for pie and a pint from 9 p.m. until close. Eat, drink, watch at Boomba's Pizza and Watch Bar. Every visit is an experience, delight in award-winning gourmet pizzas. Enjoy our selection of handcrafted beverages and get swept up in the thrill of live sports. Come see why they are more than just a pizza place. They are your go-to spot for good times.
This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge over at Cool Springs MD for some time now. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution or some type of goal to shed some extra pounds only to come up short. But I got some solutions because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and we all get frustrated. And that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss, because they want to cut down on your frustration. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize their program specific to you and you only. So connect with my good friends, Dr. Lodge, and at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
I'm going to give my ceiling and my floor. Cam Ward's ceiling is Patrick Mahomes, and his floor is if Patrick Mahomes were drafted by the Jets.
There was no caveat to the ceiling, just Patrick Mahomes.
Why would there be a caveat? I don't think that it's going to happen because he's not going to go to the best offensive coach of his generation.
That's okay.
And he's not going to go to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Like, that's not going to happen. But style-wise, and it's not a one-to-one comparison, but like the ability to do the basics. So like I go back to something that Steve Young said in this show a couple of years ago, which is that everybody talks about Mahomes as Superman, but really the brilliance is Clark Kent, the Clark Kent of it all. And the fact that he's able to do the basics over and over again, and that allows him the space to be Superman. I think that's important. And I think Ward has the foundation to do the Clark Kent stuff perfectly and then build the Superman stuff on top of it. The difference is Mahomes was able to do the Superman stuff immediately because of the infrastructure, because of what he had in the offense. Tennessee's just not going to have that. Not just the coaching, but the skill guys as well. It's going to take a while for the Superman to be reliable at the NFL level.
That was Kevin Clark on the This Is Football podcast talking about his ceiling and floor for Cam Ward. His ceiling is Patrick Mahomes. His floor is Patrick Mahomes if he was drafted by the Jets. But the point is the infrastructure. Will Cam Ward have the proper infrastructure in Tennessee? Again, assuming he is drafted by the Titans. Will Cam Ward have the proper infrastructure, or will the Titans have the proper infrastructure to help Cam Ward be the best version of himself? Our friend Trey is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Trey, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing today?
Good.
Hey, Trey.
Hey, I believe in my heart, yes, they have the infrastructure. Derek loved it over there. You know, he talked about great things that they do over there. Now, as far as the coaching, that's still on the table. So I believe that this young man will have to have extreme physical attributes to be able to coincide with the coaching. And if that happens, I think he'll be successful. But if that doesn't happen, then I blame it on the coaching. And y'all have a good day. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Trey.
I mean, again, this is what I talked about. Whether I don't think there's a right and wrong answer, because Trey's looking at it from the standpoint, and he's just basing it off of what he saw last year. Did Will Levis improve ever? No, he didn't. Did they develop Will Levis by any means? No, they didn't. Because, I mean, it was on full display, I think in game 1 or 2, where they asked him not to do something and he went out and did it anyway. That's not developing. That's not getting better. And it happened more times than not so throughout the season. So someone like Trey, who calls our show religiously, and we love when he does, and we love that he's listening, and anyone else like Trey, when they say, well, I don't trust the coaching staff, there's not much I can fight back on.
Right. And the issue, as Kevin Clark mentions in that clip, is Patrick Mahomes won the freaking lottery when it came to the situation he found himself in. Most times, quarterbacks, highly touted quarterbacks, end up in situations like the Titans situation because the Titans were bad. And that's why the Titans are in position to draft Cam Ward in the first place. So I absolutely hear Trey's and others' concerns about whether Brian Callahan is the right coach to develop a young quarterback. Josh on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, when it comes to Callahan last year, it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can lead Will Levis to the football field, but you can't make him play like he did in practice. Although, if I recall correctly, he didn't play that well in practice either.
No.
Wasn't there something about a ball ending up in the lake?
Well,
wasn't that a whole thing?
That's a whole conspiracy theory by Jared. He's going to push that narrative. The ball bounced.
Okay, either way, the ball ended up in the lake. Jared always mentions the joint practices with the Seahawks before the season, 2-minute drill. Will Levis throws an interception on his first play, and then Callahan just like, all right, that's it. We're not going out there for another rep, right? So even in practice, Will Levis may not have been his best self. So that's what my point is about Callahan is, look, Callahan absolutely has to show more this season, and he's in a bad spot for most coaches in the sense that the general manager who hired him is no longer here. So Mike Borgonzi does not have that emotional tie to Brian Callahan the same way Rand Carthon would have. So oftentimes when a general manager gets fired and a coach sticks around, it's only a matter of time before the new GM wants his own guy. So Callahan's in a tough spot. But I'm wondering what more, Derek, do you want to see? Again, we're basing all of these conversations under the assumption that the Titans are drafting Cam Ward. what would you want to see more from Brian Callahan next football season to give you that confidence that he can indeed do this job?
I just need to see the quarterback develop. I need to see what we've seen, not necessarily the productivity, even though that would be great. I need to see what I saw out of Jaden Daniels, out of Caleb Williams, out of Drake May, out of Bo Nix, Michael Penix, guys that got their opportunity and still are starting quarterbacks in this league at such an early age. What did I see from them? And again, I'm not talking about the numbers that they put up, and I'm not talking about the wins and losses, because that can be skewed a little bit because some teams are better than the others. All I want to see is what those guys did, develop and get better each and every week. Caleb Williams, his doesn't look as good because his team wasn't winning. But if you watch Caleb Williams play, if it wasn't for him, he has dog in him. He wants to win so bad. He got better throughout the year.
Think about that play Drake May made at the end of the game in Nashville to force overtime.
Absolutely. That's what I want to see, that you're coaching this guy up and you're developing him, that when he gets in situations Drake May was in last year against the Titans and he came through for New England, I don't want to see what Will Levis, did at those crucial times and he took steps back. That's not developing. That's not showing me nor the fan base that you are this quarterback sort of whisperer, young one, but quarterback whisperer that you were made out to be. That's all I want to see. I want to see development in a quarterback each and every time he steps out there. He doesn't need to be perfect, but if I can look at him and say, okay, he's not making those same mistakes that he did in week 2 and 3. If I could see that, then Brian Callahan is doing his job. He didn't do his job last year. Why? Because we kept seeing the same old mess ups about Will Levis.
But then I go back to what I said before. It feels like there was only so much that Brian Callahan could do in that situation. Like, Brian Callahan is not coaching Will Levis to make these ridiculous reads and Hail Mary, not an actual Hail Mary, but a Hail Mary, I don't want to get sacked, so I'm going to throw the ball in the wrong direction type of plays to avoid the sack. Brian Callahan, as I said, there's only so much a coach can do. A coach, I have likened many times Will Levis to my 3.5-year-old son who's at home sick today. You can tell, I can tell my son, Arlo, don't do this. Don't do that. And he's just going to say, I'm going to do it. Like that's that. I kind of liken that.
Arlo's under 5 or 5 and under.
He's 3.5.
Exactly.
But my point is that's sort of what I get. That's the vibe I get from Will Levis last year, or the vibe I got from Will Levis last year is Brian Callahan said, all right, Will, don't have to do anything special here. Keep it simple. Don't do anything stupid. And Will Levis looks at Brian Callahan and says, I'm going to do it. and that's what he did. So, like, I am not giving Brian Callahan a pass because when you have a 3-14 record as a head coach, you're not getting a pass. But I am allowing myself for some wiggle room here.
Okay. A little bit of latitude.
A little bit of wiggle room to say, how much could Brian Callahan have gotten out of Will Levis? Like, I wonder if Will Levis was sort of a lost cause, for lack of a better term. So I do want to see Brian Callahan get the opportunity with a young quarterback. I want to see him prove that if he coaches Cam Ward, that Cam Ward can develop into a really good quarterback. I'm not going to say Patrick Mahomes, but you hope it's more than Patrick Mahomes if he played on the Jets, as Kevin Clark said on the This Is Football podcast. One texter says, I think Levis is the problem. Plenty of plays where players were open and he did something dumb. That's sort of my point. Again, the job of the coach is to prevent the player from doing those things. But it certainly sounded like Brian Callahan was telling Will Levis each and every week, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And Will Levis just kept on doing it. So at some point, I mean, we've all been there, right? At some point, you try your hardest and you fail miserably. The lesson is, Chase McCabe, never try. And but but you try something, and after a while you're just like, all right, like how many more times can I try it? Like what's the old saying? Have I ever told you the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if at any point last year Brian Callahan was just like, I don't know, man. I keep telling Will Levis to do this. He's doing the opposite. I'm just like, there's only so much I can do.
I mean, again, that was on full display because you can see some of his facial expressions when Will Levis would do things.
Yes.
And it was just like, seriously?
The camera caught him
Yeah.
early. I can't remember which game it was. It might have been the Packers. It might have been either the Jets game or the Packers game where the camera caught Brian Callahan walking up to Will Levis after another Will Levis turnover and saying, "Hey, what the F are you doing?" I mean,
Yes.
we were all Brian
We
Callahan in that
just
moment.
went over this. But here's what I do blame Brian Callahan for, because you're right, Adam. I can lead you. The saying is, I can lead you to water, but I
Yes.
I can't force you to drink it.
Correct.
Or I could teach you how to be a farmer, but I can't tell you whether your crop is, if you don't do it the right way, the way I told you, it may not come out right. So listen, you're right with that. There's nothing Brian Callahan could have done outside of what he was trying to do.
Right.
Because my thing is, like you said, coaches. So one of the jobs of an NFL coach is to put his players, especially a head coach and offensive coordinator, to put his players in the best possible position to succeed. That's what you do. Find out what he does right and do it more. Don't tell me what he can't do. Just tell me what he can do, and let's do that and do it more and find different ways to do it. That's your responsibility as a head coach / offensive coordinator. And you're right. He was doing that for Will Levis. But here's where I fought him. And this is why I think Rand Carthon is not here anymore. And I fought anyone else that is still on that coaching staff from an offensive side of the ball. You did not bring any competition in for Will Levis last offseason. Mason Rudolph ain't no competition. Everybody knew that. Mason Rudolph was exactly what he was, a backup quarterback. So essentially, you had two backup quarterbacks fighting for a job, and the other one wasn't scared about getting benched, because he knew that he wasn't going to beat him out. I said from day one, bring in competition for Will Levis. Let him compete, because I truly believe he is a competitor. And if you force him to compete, he will get better. But you didn't do that. You coddled him, made sure he knew the job was his coming in, and look what happened. You can't afford to do that, Tennessee Titans. You're not the Kansas City Chiefs. You're not the Baltimore Ravens. You're not the Buffalo Bills. You're not the Philadelphia Eagles, teams that are consistently in the playoffs and or the Super Bowl. You don't have time to be sitting back and coddling players. You don't have time to be sitting back and not bringing in competition. You didn't bring in competition for the right tackle position. You didn't bring in competition for the quarterback position. And then you wonder why your team looked the way it looked. So that I do blame Brian Callahan for.
615-737-1025. Again, the question for all of you. Do the Titans have the infrastructure to support Cam Ward to be a top-tier NFL quarterback one day? And if they do not, what more do you need to see from them? 615-737-1025. A reminder to tune into 94.9 The Fan for Vanderbilt women's basketball as the number 7 seeded Commodores face the number 10 seeded Oregon Ducks in the NCAA women's tournament tomorrow at 4:30. That game, by the way, taking place at Cameron Indoor Stadium.
We have an update on the score.
We
Creighton
do.
Up 23-21 over Louisville.
Yes, we do.
Right now with 8 minutes and 50-some seconds left in the first period.
Oop, now it's
First
25-21 Creighton with roughly 8:50 left in the first half. But you need to make sure that you listen to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow for Vanderbilt women's basketball, Commodores and Ducks in the first round of the NCAA women's tournament at 4:30, pregame at 4:15, and coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. D. Mace Vingen and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingen here at Boombaz in Murfreesboro. Come see us. Come watch some basketball. Creighton up 7 on Louisville, 28-21 with 7:19 remaining in the first half in the first game of the NCAA tournament. Another score for you, 16:50 remaining in the first half. High Point with an 8-5 lead against Purdue in a 13 versus 4 matchup. I did predict High Point to win that game in our mini Take It to the Bank yesterday, so I am hoping for the High Point Panthers to upset the Boilermakers. But we are talking about whether the Titans have the infrastructure for Cam Ward to be the best version of himself. And Kevin texts in on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHunted.com with a thought on Brian Callahan, because, of course, as we've discussed, Brian Callahan is a big part of this. Kevin writes, quote, the main thing the head coach has to do, especially a young one, he needs to prove. Okay, hold on. Let me start that again. The main thing the head coach has to do, especially a young one, find answers. Regardless of developing talent, he has to have answers. When you go up 14 after 1 the rest of the game and get killed, that's because the other head coach had the answers to the test. I have never seen Callahan one time find the answers to defensive struggles, offensive adjustments. Hell, he couldn't even coordinate a successful offense. He doesn't have the answers on that side of the ball, much less the whole team. I was all for Callahan, but after one season, I think he's a bust. He doesn't have the knowledge to be in his position yet, and he certainly doesn't have the confidence to lead NFL players like Vrabel did. Not a leader of men, not a top-notch X's and O's guy. He's not ready to be an NFL head coach. But look, he is going to be the head coach of this team when the season starts. That's what the Titans are telling us. And if they draft Cam Ward, it's going to be up to Brian Callahan to get the best out of Cam Ward. If you have skepticism of that, you are well within your right to do so, to have that skepticism because of what we saw last year. But the head coach, as Kevin Clark said in the clip, the head coach, that plays a big part in that successful infrastructure. So we will have to see. We won't have the answers until the season starts. But certainly there is a lot of pressure on Brian Callahan to show that he can indeed be a big part of that successful infrastructure.
Yeah, and I think that's what the fan base wants to see moving forward. That, you know, Brian Callahan is capable of leading this team. Listen, every coach has their own coaching philosophy and style. It may mirror a bit, you know, with some guys that they may have coached with or coach under, but they take all those things and they make them their own. And whatever you get is what you get. I think Brian Callahan, just like any other first-year coach, because remember, Mike Vrabel, his first year, he wasn't great at it, okay? There were some things that he had to learn how to do and the type of head coach he needed to be. It took him a year. Now, he inherited a roster that was pretty good, a veteran roster, and John Robinson added that one piece that would sort of make them a contender, and that was the quarterback. And then they drafted some other guys. But listen, make no mistake, he didn't start off. Vrabel didn't start off this, great coach, and he still isn't what I consider a great coach. Is he a good coach? Yes, he's a good coach, but he didn't just jump in the saddle and everybody, oh, he's a good coach. No, he had to prove his worth too. Now, it turned out to after a while, hey, listen, this guy, he knows what he's doing. But yet still, his last 2 seasons here as a Nashville, as a Tennessee Titan coach, how did it look? Bad. Look really bad. Hence, he ain't got no job. He didn't have a job anymore for a year. So Brian Callahan, hopefully, the mark of a good coach or potential good coach is that you learn from the things that you did wrong the previous year and you become a better leader for it. Let's see what type of leader he's going to become moving forward. As a matter, I just want to see him become a better play caller. A guy that can win games at those crucial moments and put together plays that is going to move the ball down the field at crucial moments. Okay, you do that, you start winning. Nobody's gonna be talking about how if you're a leader of men or not, because all winning coaches aren't great leaders of men. Believe me that they surrounded themselves with individuals that help push the culture and help push what they're saying. But make no mistake, every head coach out there that wins that doesn't mean they are a great leader of men.
We welcome in Willie Donick, who is live at Bridgestone Arena, Predators and Ducks. Willie, we are just there he is. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Willie Donick. Hello, Willie.
I am here. Yes. Greetings from Barrel House. We got the
Willie back at
NCAA
Bridgestone
tournament
Arena.
going. We've got it going.
Yes.
Creighton and Louisville.
Louisville making
High
a bit
Point,
of a
Purdue.
Louisville making a bit of a run here. They've scored the past 4 points, 28-25 Creighton over Louisville. So Willie,
Yes,
we've been
at High
talking
Point.
this
Don't
hour.
forget High Point playing Purdue, and Purdue is a key team for me in my brackets. But Lindsay Rowley, who is here in the building, representing the High Point Panthers. She played volleyball there. This is the very first time High Point has ever made it to the tournament, which always elicits the question from people that are filling out brackets. Where is High Point? So, Adam, I think you know, right? You know where a High Point is.
I think I do. It's in
Okay.
North Carolina.
It is. It is in North Carolina. It's close to where you were born.
Yes.
Not far.
Well, I am also pulling for High Point because I did pick High Point in our mini Take It to the Bank yesterday at the end of the program. High Point up 11-9 early in the game against Purdue. But Willie, we've been discussing. I played a clip from Kevin Clark's This Is Football podcast. He was talking about the floor and the ceiling for Cam Ward. And in that clip, he was talking about Patrick Mahomes. And he talked about how Patrick Mahomes came into a near perfect situation, perhaps a perfect situation, with Andy Reid as his coach and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. And he was talking about Cam Ward and how if Cam Ward ends up with the Tennessee Titans, he's not going to have that infrastructure. It might take him longer. It will probably take him longer to to develop into, that ceiling version of himself. So the question I want to ask you is, what do you think of the state of the infrastructure that the Titans have? And if they bring Cam Ward into it, how successful do you think he can be based on that infrastructure as it currently sits?
Well, when you pick first, your infrastructure is obviously broken, or else you wouldn't have the first pick. So it's not going to be good for Cam Ward. So I think it's night and day compared to Mahomes. And also, let's remember that as fortunate as Mahomes was to go to a team that already was good and had a great coach and have all that great infrastructure, I don't believe for a second that Mahomes would have not done well at other places. Nobody would coach Mahomes the way he plays. He plays unlike anybody I've ever seen before. So he's just that great. So I think it was the perfect storm for him to have early success and be on a track now to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I think he would have still shined in a broken system, but it would have been harder for him to win, right? They would have had to build around him. I think that's always the tough part. Like if you look at Peyton Manning's first year, Troy Aikman's first year, some of the other guys who were the first pick, oftentimes it's a year or two of really tough times. And then it's survival, and then hopefully the team knows what it's doing to build that infrastructure.
615-737-1025. Derek and I are live out at Boomba's in Murfreesboro. Come see us. Come watch some basketball. Have some delicious food. Our updates of the NCAA tournament are presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by thenewcumberland.com. Twin Peaks and Bet365. By the way, Creighton has opened up a 15-point lead.
Wow.
Against Louisville. I believe that's a 12-0 run by the Blue Jays against
I think
the
it was all
Cardinals.
threes, wasn't it?
I have not seen every point, but Creighton opening up a 15-point lead. I said at the top of the show, Willie, that the vibe on Stillman and Company coming up at 2:00 will largely depend on the outcome of this game. And right now, it's not looking so good.
The Blue Jays are
for
7 for
Garrett
14
Stillman.
from three, 15 for 26 overall from the field. So they are balling.
Creighton up 40-25 on Louisville. Purdue up 13-11 on High Point. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, there is someone out there in the NFL world. It doesn't sound like anybody wants him. And what could be next for this lonely wanderer? We'll get to that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace Fingan and Donick 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Derek and I are live out at Boombaz in Murfreesboro. Tomorrow, Willie, Derek, and I, along with Jason, Big Joe, and Jared, will be at the Boombaz location in Spring Hill. So come and watch some basketball with us. All updates of the NCAA tournament are presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by thenewcumberland.com, Twin Peaks, and Bet365. Creighton has a 47-29 lead on Louisville. And I just want to read a series of tweets from our very own Jared Stillman, who is a proud alum of Louisville. 42 minutes ago. It's so nice to have the Cards back in the tournament. 21 minutes ago. We're not playing any defense right now. 1 minute ago. This game is over. Holy crap, Creighton is legit.
Man, that tells a lot about what you think about your program's basketball team. I would have never said that about the Michigan State Spartans.
What the game is
Jared
over?
Yeah, they hadn't even gotten to halftime. And if you know anything about basketball, what happens in the second half? You can come back from a 15, 20-point deficit. Now, is Louisville coming back? I'm not sure. They're not Michigan State.
Creighton is now up 20, 49-29 with 52.8 seconds left in the first
but I
half.
would never say that about the Spartans. And I'm
Mm-mm.
sure there are Kentucky fans out there that would never say that about their team.
Well, you can tell that to Jared when he gets here at 2 o'clock. How about that?
Hey,
And
Willie,
Louisville-
man, you missing some good pizza. I tell you this, man. Man, you missing some good pizza.
I'm kind of bummed about that. No question about it. And the interesting thing
But
to
you'll
me
be
about
at
this
Boombaz
game,
tomorrow with us.
I'm looking
Spring
forward to
Hill.
that. I'm looking forward to that for sure. Creighton has the ball for the last possession here. They've hit 9 3-pointers in the first half. So they're going to cool off. They're a great shooting team.
Woo.
But I think Louisville has time to get back into this game. There's no question about it. With a 30-second shot clock, the long TV timeouts, the game is being played in Lexington. So they've got a big crowd there. There's no question they can get back in it. It's not over, even when you're down by 20. As crazy as that sounds, maybe there was a day where it used to be that way. Not the way the game is played now, especially the way the three-pointer is used. Louisville was down by 15 in the second half to Stanford and came back and won in the ACC tournament. So this one's not over. And Hepburn just hit a
is
3
possible, and we will
at the
keep-
buzzer. So they're down only 15 at the half. They got it from 20 to 15. They scored the last 5.
All right.
So there's hope for you, Jared. There's hope. Don't give up on your guys. But I'm gonna quote you that you said it was over when Louisville comes back and wins this game.
He's not a true fan, even though he went there and spent his money there. He's not a true supporter. Come on. You would never say that about your team if you were a true supporter.
Creighton has a 49-34 halftime lead against Louisville in the first half of the first round of the NCAA tournament. But I mentioned this lonely wanderer. There is someone in the NFL right now. He's looking for a home. He doesn't have one. Will somebody please think of Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers is out there wandering the beach with his AirPods and his big towel, looking out into the distance, into the ocean, wondering, will I be playing football this season? And there was a story that came out yesterday, I believe, that the Vikings are moving past their discussions with Aaron Rodgers, leaving second-year player J.J. McCarthy atop the quarterback depth chart as the offseason practices approach. The article also mentions sources describe the possibility of Rodgers joining the team as non-zero, but all along sources have maintained that there was only a small chance that coach Kevin O'Connell would upend the organizational plan for McCarthy, whom O'Connell has called, quote, our franchise quarterback. So what does this mean for Aaron Rodgers? And I think Cam Hayward plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers, has his own podcast. Everybody has their own podcast these days. There are too many podcasts. But Cam Hayward was on his podcast talking about Aaron Rodgers, and I think Cam Hayward speaks for a lot of us.
So if they called you and were like, we need you to follow him into the darkness for a couple days, he says if you come down there with him, he's signing. Are you going to be off the grid for a little bit, go to the darkness and try to get this guy? We need you. You're our best recruiter. I'm about to get into Darius Slay, and it sounds like you recruited him too. So we need you to start recruiting. Get that NIL bag out like you did at Ohio State.
I ain't doing that or darkness retreat. I don't need any of that crap. Like, either you want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler or you don't. That's simple. That's the pitch. Like, if you want me to recruit, that's the recruiting pitch. You know, Pittsburgh Steelers. If you want to be part of it, so be it. If you don't, no skin on my back.
That was Cam Hayward on his podcast, I think, speaking for a lot of people when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. But teams need quarterbacks. He's a quarterback. What do we make of Aaron Rodgers' career prospects right now, Willie?
Well, the Vikings thing never made sense to me. All those talks. I know there was the Brett Favre track Packers to the Jets to the Vikings. But other than that, like if you're the Vikings and you're not quite sure about McCarthy, then you just re-sign Sam Darnold. You don't go out and get an unknown in Aaron Rodgers. If you're committed to McCarthy, that makes more sense. Okay, you live with that. So I didn't get the Vikings thing. The Steelers thing is the one that I think is the right fit. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. Is it, and I don't know enough about the situation to know if it's Rodgers resisting or the Steelers aren't quite sure where they want to go. But like, what's the alternative for the Steelers right now as we have more and more time going by and quarterbacks are finding jobs? Like, where's the match?
You bring back Russell Wilson, I suppose.
Whew, I'm not sure I'm not sure they're going that route. I think the Russell Wilson experiment was just that. I think they liked some of the things he did, but ultimately they knew that where they want to go, he's not going to be able to get them there. You know, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or some other quarterback now, you start to hear whispers about, you know, Atlanta potentially trading once again Kirk Cousins, and so he can be in play for the Pittsburgh Steelers in that regard. Now, what are you going to give up to get a Kirk Cousins? That has yet to be determined. But Kirk Cousins is still in play because it seems like Atlanta, for all intents and purposes, they have moved on and they're going with Michael Penix. And to have a high-price backup like that may not be beneficial for this team moving forward. So if they can get out of it and trade him away and Pittsburgh is still looking for a quarterback, that may be an option for the Steelers. But I'm like you, Willie. I think Aaron Rodgers still has a lot of football left in him. I truly believe that, because outside of the Achilles injury, his career hasn't been injury riddled. He seems like he takes care of his body, both from a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint. However you choose to look at it and make fun of him. Again, you talk so much about the players' mental health, and you zero in on it as a league and as individual players, and then when someone's actually doing something for their mental health, you're making fun of it. I don't get that. Just because you don't do it, just because you don't choose to do that, doesn't mean what he's doing is wrong. Okay, he's trying to be the best version of himself he can possibly be. So if Pittsburgh is still in a position where they are looking for a quarterback come May and possibly even after that, because that's the draft. I think the draft is late April, May,
about a month from now.
Yeah. So if they're still looking for a quarterback after that, a starting quarterback, a veteran quarterback, then I'm sure Aaron Rodgers will be one of those options. And Cam Hayward, once Aaron Rodgers gets there, Cam's going to pull all that stuff aside. He's going to pull it aside. Why? Because he wants to win.
So a story a couple of days ago on The Athletic talked about how Rodgers was hoping to sign with the Vikings, and he is seeking an annual salary in the same general range as Sam Darnold's. And Sam Darnold signed, I believe it was 3 years, $100-ish million. So in the $35, $36, $37 million range for for Aaron Rodgers, that's what he's looking for. The story also says Rodgers has been targeted by the Steelers and Giants, but has essentially put both teams on hold while he waits for clarity regarding the Vikings situation. If Minnesota ceases to be an option, which reportedly it has, it's also possible that Rodgers will turn down both the Steelers, a 2024 playoff team, and the Giants, and instead opt for retirement. Now, keep this in mind. I saw this headline on the Front Office Sports website. Aaron Rodgers drawing very little interest from media companies. So we could imagine, right? Aaron Rodgers retiring from football, and he's on the Pat McAfee show every week. He could, I feel like make a seamless transition to being an analyst. Condition, it comes off as a pompous know-it-all who could turn off viewers. His dalliance with COVID-19 conspiracy theories and public feuds with critics like Jimmy Kimmel on the Pat McAfee show also concern some being like television people. With that in mind, the prospect of hiring Rodgers does not thrill executives. Quote, yes, he could be a great analyst, but he's insufferable, said one source. Rodgers, quote, needs an image rehab, warned another.
Listen, Stephen A. Smith comes off as a pompous know-it-all, but people love him, and ESPN just gave him 20 million reasons why they're going to love him even more per year. Okay, so he thinks all these guys when they get on television think they know more than the next guy. Okay, that's just the way the business is. A bunch of testosterone and whatever else is thrown around, whether it be man or woman, is thrown around, and one person thinks they know more than the other. So that part again, like if you don't like the guy, you just don't like him, and I get it. I've been in rooms where people tend to think that they know more than what the average person or what I know, but I don't get offended by that. It's like, okay, if you do, so be it. Let it be. Hopefully whatever it is, it helps us, okay, in what we're trying to do, whatever it is. So yes, they are talking yes, one anonymous source said that, or two, but best believe when Aaron Rodgers officially retires and these networks start looking around, no, he won't be a play-by-play guy because I don't think he's that guy. But they're going to be looking to bring him in. Why? Because he draws eyes to the television, whether you like him or not, sort of like Stephen A.
What do you think, Willie?
I think he could be very compelling on the air. I think there will be somebody like that. Just the McAfee platform itself is interesting. Just like the Manning brothers probably could go in the traditional role of doing a game, I think, on Sunday, but they've chosen this pathway that they're on right now where they kind of do their own thing. So it depends on the forum, right? If we're talking about like a wide open talk show like McAfee's where it's almost, you want the controversial, you want somebody that's, to use the quote, know-it-all. It's not even that. It's really compelling. Whether you agree or disagree, that's compelling content, right, for that show.
Exactly.
That's different than being in the studio for ESPN's game day, or something like that. So different. The forum would be the key to me. And if you're just going to pick his brain as an analyst, he's probably got a lot to offer if he wants to do it and put the work in to do it. I just like with Brady, I would want to know, is he going to work at it? Is he going to learn how to do it? Are they just going to throw him into the top chair, or is he willing to work his way up the chart? Because a great player doesn't always make a great analyst.
I do think that he ends up playing in the NFL this season. There are still teams that need quarterbacks, and a desperate team is going to pay him what he wants to play quarterback. We mentioned the Giants, the Steelers still need a quarterback. So I envision one of those teams is going to pony up and pay Aaron Rodgers because, quite frankly, there are really few other options.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've said this about Aaron Rodgers, and I think he's sort of starting to find this out. The leverage that you had 2 years ago is gone. It is completely gone. You 2 years ago was able to, basically commandeer two franchises, trying to navigate your way out. you had the Jets held hostage, and you had the Green Bay Packers held hostage right before that. And you got your way. You got to the team you wanted to, and they got you the exact players that you wanted. You're not in that position anymore. And whether he wants $40-something million or not, he may find out that the market is saying, you know what, Aaron, because the power that you yielded around, or wielded around, whatever the word is, wielded around 2 years ago, you don't have that wand and that power anymore. So this is what we're willing to pay you. 2 years, knowing that we won't see the second year, 2 years for about $60 million.
So $30 million per season.
So, and that's the going rate pretty much for a guy with his resume. And it may be even higher, but he's on the downcline. He has no more power to command more than that. They're going to say 2 years, $60 million. Take it or leave it.
Rick,
unless they're in a desperate situation.
Rick on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, wants to weigh in on our previous conversation about Brian Callahan and the infrastructure for Cam Ward. Rick, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call. And my thoughts on the infrastructure situation as it comes to coaching is what I would prefer to see this year. I wish that Callahan would be the head coach on the sidelines, and I wish he would turn over the play calling to the offensive coordinator, if they have one that's a play caller. Because that's where I saw some problems last year, is he would get so caught up in the game going on, and sometimes frustration with Will, that he would look at his list of plays to call, and it was just like he was reading Braille or something. You know, I just saw some fogginess in trying to be the head coach and trying to be a play caller. And I want to know if you guys have any issues or think along those lines at all, or you think you'll just be fine at it.
Thanks for the call, Rick.
Here's the problem with that, because I'm not going to sit here and say that Rick is completely wrong, because again, he was a first-year coach and trying to figure these things out, and at times he did look as if he was a rookie at it. But here's the problem with that. Why did you hire him? Why? Because of his play calling potential ability and his ability to develop quarterbacks. That's why you hired him as your head coach, because you know he can have the slash of head coach / OC. The Cincinnati Bengals coach spoke highly of him, said he was the guy that helped really put the game plan together, because he was so busy during the day or during the week with being a head coach, and it was on game day that he called the plays. Why is their coach escaping my brain?
Which one?
Cincinnati's coach escaping my brain.
Zach Taylor.
Yeah, Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor says, well, Brian Callahan had a big hand in putting together the game plan for the week, and I just called plays on Sunday. So if you brought him in here because of those things, he then can't, after 1 year, demote himself. He can't, because if that's the case, we don't need you as a head coach. So the only way he can do that is if his team starts to have success, they start to win, and then he can say, you know what, I got so much other stuff going on, I got to make sure I pay attention to everybody here. Holtz or whoever else, McCoy, you can handle the play calling now while I be the CEO of the team. That's the only way he can relinquish power outside of Brinkert or Borgonzi saying, hey, listen, either you find you an OC or we're finding a new head coach.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers, the Titans infrastructure for potentially Cam Ward. It's all on the table. 615-737-1025. I want to remind all of you that D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick is proudly presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We are live out at Boomba's in Murfreesboro. We will, again, a reminder, be at the Spring Hill location of Boomba's tomorrow. Willie, Derek, and I will all be out there, as well as Chase and Big Joe, and, of course, Jared Stillman. 615-737-1025. Speaking of the NCAA tournament, Tennessee kicks off its NCAA tournament later today, a 5:50 p.m. tip-off against Wofford in the first round of the Midwest region in Lexington, Kentucky. So let's talk about Tennessee's championship prospects. We'll do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, the game.
Quick scoreboard update from the tournament. Creighton leads Louisville 49-34 at the half. Creighton hit 9 threes in the first half. They've been red hot. Louisville was down as many as 20. High Point trailing Purdue 35-25 with under 2 minutes to go in the first half. Let's tell you about Loan Pronto. And if you're looking for money to address a need, let's say you've got a home improvement project that you've got cooked up in your mind, you've got all the plans, but now you just need the funding. Loan Pronto is the leader in quickly converting home equity into cold hard cash so you can take that money and then address the remodel. The good thing is they can get you that cash fast from your home. No paperwork, no cumbersome process, no junk fees, often no appraisal. The average homeowner has over $300,000 in equity, and that's yours to use. So get approved in as little as 1 day with no hard credit pull. Call Loan Pronto right now, 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
Dr. J.
This week's Nashville's Best Deal is from Streetcar Taps and Garden. Patio season is here. Enjoy great food, cold drinks, and fresh air on Streetcar Taps and Garden's covered patio. Get half off a $30 gift card now before they are gone at thegamenashville.com/deals. I also want to let everybody know to tune into 102.5 and 106.3 The Game for Vanderbilt men's basketball as the 10th seeded Commodores take on the 7th seeded St. Mary's Gales in the NCAA men's basketball tournament tomorrow at 2:15. Pregame will begin at 1:45, and coverage is also available on 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Willie, I just want to let you know that during the break, you were doing your live read for Lone Pronto, and Chase and Derek and I, we all said, man, Willie's in his element right now, being the update anchor for the first day of the NCAA tournament. This is Willie's, like he's a kid in a candy store right now.
I'm all over it. I'm all over it. I'm all over it. It's halftime. Purdue just hit a buzzer beater to go up by 10 over High Point. And out of the gate in the second half, Creighton has gotten a bucket here. They're underway against Louisville. So Louisville's got to try to chip away at this thing. They're down 54-36, 18:05 to go.
This is your bread and butter, Willie Donick, being the update anchor on the air. So speaking of the NCAA tournament, Tennessee starts its journey toward the Final Four and possibly beyond tonight at 5:50 tip-off time against Wofford in the first round of the Midwest region. It's time to ask the age-old question, everybody. Is this the year that Rick Barnes and the Tennessee Volunteers, they make it to the Final Four, they challenge for a national championship? So let's start optimistically. Willie Donick, how do the Volunteers reach their ultimate goal this season? How does it have to happen?
I forgot to mention, too, in my element, the Curtis Blow, We're Playing Basketball. I know every word to that song. I used to get the boombox outside the outdoor court, just play that over and over, shoot around, imitate Bernard King, Magic and Bird, and all the guys that are mentioned in there.
Shout out to Nick Frazier.
Oh,
Shout
no
out
question.
Nick Frazier.
That was great. Number one, I think their draw is doable to get to the Final Four. The key is, and this is what I wonder, if they can get to a matchup with Houston, that's an interesting matchup because Houston is so unique. But I don't see a problem in the first two games. I think Tennessee matches up with their first two opponents pretty well. I'm intrigued about a Kentucky third meeting because Kentucky has beaten them twice. I'm intrigued about somebody like Purdue, who we're watching right now. Purdue's not the same as they were last year. They're still really good. They just don't have the Zach Edey guy in the middle. But Purdue has eliminated Tennessee twice in incredible games in the NCAA tournament. And so that could be sitting there in a Final Eight. But look, I think it comes down to one thing for Tennessee. The defense is going to be there. They are going to give themselves a chance to win with defense. If they can get on a roll and shoot the ball really well, and the guys who I've said all year long can be a little up and down from the field, Meshack, Gainey, Milicic, if they have their best games, then I think Tennessee can roll. I think it's going to come down to those guys because I think Lanier will do his thing. I think their point guard is going to do his thing. Zakai Ziegler is tremendous. I believe in him. It's the other guys that I think have to – they're going to play D, the other guys. Can they bring their offensive game at a high level?
I just want to say that if Tennessee were to face Houston in the Elite Eight, you would probably need 3 Navy SEALs to officiate that game. I can only imagine how physical that game would be if those two teams were to meet. You know, a big question, Derek, that we've been talking a lot about leading up to the NCAA tournament as it relates to the Volunteers is Chaz Lanier. And can Chaz Lanier be Dalton Connect like? We saw how important Dalton Connect was to the Volunteers last season. I mean, that game in that Elite Eight between Purdue and Tennessee, Zach Edey and Dalton Connect were just throwing haymakers at each other. It was two of the best players in the sport going head to head. Lanier He can fill it up, man. Are we confident that Lanier can have a Dalton Connect-like influence on this Volunteers team in the tournament?
I think he can, but listen, with Chaz, I think the first half and the second half for him has been, it's like night and day. The first half of games, especially over the course of the last, 3, 4, 5 games, is that he comes out and it seems like it's intentional with him, and it's intentional with the coaching staff and the players on the court to get him the ball. And you see what Chaz can do when he's aggressive, when they're aggressive in their play call, and when it comes to him, and when he's trying to come off those picks and he's really running off those picks the way you need to. He fills the bucket. He fills the basket up in the first half. But the second half, and we've talked about this, Willie, the second half, over the last 4 or 5 games, he's been a no-show, especially in the championship game, the SEC championship game against Florida. Started off really well in the first half, got himself in foul trouble, and couldn't be a factor in the second half. And I think that's one reason why they ended up losing that game to Florida, because their best scorer was not able, one, because of foul trouble, and then 2, because it's just been these two tales of 2 halves for him. He's an aggressive scorer. He's a damn good player, a hell of a shooter. But unless he plays more of a balanced game, and when I say balance, for everyone, I'm talking about the contribution that he's given in the second half should be the same. Well, the contribution he gave in the first half should be the same contribution he gives in the second half. And if you're a Vol fan, you haven't seen that from him as good as he has been. This guy is a second team All-American. So this guy knows how to fill up the bucket with the buckets. But he just hadn't been able to do that over the last 4 or 5 games. And if Tennessee's going to win, they need him like Dalton Connect to be a bigger contributor, not just in the first half, but also in the second half.
I look at him differently than I look at Connect. And I know they both played at a lower level of college basketball before they got to Tennessee, but I just don't think that Lanier should be compared to Connect. He's not the same kind of guy. He's not a take over the game type of scorer. He's a tremendously efficient catch and shoot jump shooter. You've got to get him the ball in the right spots. He's not a slasher to the basket. He doesn't get to the free throw line very often. So he's limited in how he's going to beat you. So I think that's a different game plan. Like I think if Tennessee were to play Purdue again, you'd have some of the same elements, but it would be very, very different than last year's game where you had 2 totally dominant players, because Purdue doesn't have the same post presence. They've got some big guys in there, but they've got nobody like Zach Edey. They've got the shooters surrounding him, but the dynamic would be very different if that plays out, which I would love to see again. But I think it's really not – Lanier is going to do his thing to me. I don't think we should expect too much from him. To me, it's the other guys like Milicic they've got to provide that secondary scoring to go with the defense.
But he has to be that guy. 2 out of their 3 – there was 2 out of the 3 losses that they had toward the end of the season. Ole Miss and Florida. And then Auburn's in there too, but they end up winning that game. He didn't score over 15 points.
You know why that is? You know what that is? At the end of the game, Derek, at the end of the game, when there's a big possession, how is Tennessee going to go? Who has the ball?
Exactly.
It's going to be Ziegler. It's going to be Ziegler
right.
Because he can attack the basket and make it happen. Lanier is not a guy you give the ball and clear out. He's just not that kind of guy, and that's not his fault.
But it's not even him getting the ball and clearing out. It's him being aggressive off those picks. him being aggressive, trying to get the ball and then filling the basket up. Even in the win against Auburn, he had 12 points, and the majority of those points came in the second half. I mean, the first half. Against Texas and South Carolina, which were 2 wins, he had 23 points in both games, and he played more of a balanced game in both of those. That's what they need from Chaz. They need 20-some points from him, but it need to be a balanced 20-some points. And like you said, Willie, those other guys need to contribute. If he's not shooting the ball well and those other guys are still contributing, Tennessee will not go far. I'm just telling you that.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the Tennessee Volunteers as they prepare to start the NCAA tournament tonight. 5:50 p.m. tip-off against Wofford in the first round of the Midwest region in Lexington, Kentucky. A quick score update. Creighton 62, Louisville 46. With 13:45 remaining in the second half, Purdue is up 37-27 on High Point at halftime. Wisconsin up 9-5 on Montana in a 3-14 matchup in the East region. That game, I don't know where it's taking place because it doesn't say on the scoreboard. Either way, Wisconsin up 9-5 on Montana in a 3-14 matchup in the East region. 615-737-1025. Come out and see us at Boombas today and tomorrow. We will be at the Spring Hill location tomorrow. It's Thirsty Thursday, talls for smalls on draft beer all day. Tomorrow is Frozen Friday with $5 frozen drinks all day long. Also, Boombas has a late night special for pie and a pint from 9 to close. Eat, drink, watch at Boombas Pizza and Watch Bar. Every visit is an experience. Delight in award-winning gourmet pizzas. Enjoy our selection of handcrafted beverages and get swept up in the thrill of live sports. Come see why they are more than just a pizza place. They are your go-to spot for good times.
All right, let's talk about F&M Bank. Banking made easy on purpose. We will officially take it to the bank Friday at 1:45, but we've been making a lot of picks throughout the week and had a great time with it. F&M Bank, banking made easy on purpose. Lots of tools for you, regardless of where you are in your financial parabola throughout your whole life, whether you're newly married, just starting a checking account, maybe you're a business owner, maybe you're a family looking for a HELOC to do some projects that you're looking for. All of those things are under the umbrella of our friends at F&M Bank, and they've got 20 locations in our listening area. Just find the nearest one to you, myfmbank.com. They're up in Kentucky, Hopkinsville. They're over in Clarksville, 6 locations, Murfreesboro, Mount Juliet, Springfield, and, of course, right here in Nashville. myfmbank.com. Banking made easy on purpose. We take it to the bank tomorrow at 1:45. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Donick, 102.5, 106.3 the game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vinkin here. This is an infectious song. I really enjoy it. I don't know if I had heard it before.
Oh, you haven't heard this, Adam?
You
I don't
never
think
heard
I've heard
it?
this before.
Oh my goodness!
Come on.
You never heard this?
And you call yourself a basketball fan.
I mean,
Curtis Blow.
I am considerably younger than both of you, I would
Yes.
say.
That's true. But somebody doing
Oh,
their
now
job
I've heard that.
should
Now I've
have
heard
passed this down to you. Should have passed this down
No.
to you.
I've heard this.
I mean, when you're talking about Earl the Pearl and Moses Malone and Bernard King, we're not just talking about, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. We got all those greats there, Wilt, the Stilt, but we're going deeper. We're going to the next level. And this is pre-Jordan, right? Michael Jordan is not in this song, I don't believe, correct? D-Mace?
No, he's not.
is
This
pre-Jordan.
is pre-Michael Jordan. Yeah. This is Bernard King those days, man.
Yeah.
Come on. Bernard King was
Dr.
the Michael
J.
Jordan. And Dr. J was the Michael Jordan.
Creighton is leading Louisville 65-52 with 11:37, but a Louisville player down on the court. So they are tending to him right now. Tommy is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, with a comment on the Volunteers. Tommy, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Willie, I agree with you that Chaz is one-on-one is not part of his game, but it should be. I mean, when he drives to the basket, he usually prevails, but he just don't do it enough. I'm surprised the coaches don't encourage it more. And for us to be good offensively, Meshack and Gaines need to contribute offensively. And when they do, we're usually in pretty good shape. But when they don't, then that's when we get in trouble. Thanks.
Thanks for the call, Tommy.
He has a point with that in regards to Meshack, Willie. Meshack is an interesting player because when you watch him, if you're just watching him, he's athletic, he's strong. What is he, about 6'4", somewhere around there, 6'5"?
Yeah, he's a
he
stocky
can rebound.
6'4".
Yeah, he can rebound. He can play tough defense. It just seems like they should be getting more out of Meshack, and they're not.
He's a good role player, and I think, like the caller said, when he's hitting the shot, like if you're scouting Tennessee, you've got to say, look, as soon as Lanier catches it, if you're not in his face, he's going to catch and shoot. You only have a fraction of a second. He's one of those guys that is going to catch it in rhythm, and it's gone before you can make up for it. So that's big. Ziegler is going to take the ball at you every time he has a chance. He's going to get fouled. He's going to make the right decision. He's going to put a lot of pressure on the defense. So much of your scouting report is going to go into that. So that's why guys like Gainey and Meshack and Milicic are so important. And I've seen games where Meshack is not hitting anything. Let's take the Kentucky games, right? Kentucky's not a great defensive team. Kentucky won at Tennessee because Tennessee couldn't throw it in the ocean because Meshack and those guys, they could not buy a shot from the outside. But Meshack for the year is at 36% from three. So that's not that bad. He doesn't shoot very many. So that tells me he doesn't really have the green light to shoot a lot. But if he's hitting, like Gainey's another guy. Gainey's a slasher. He can attack the basket. He can get fouled. He's very hit or miss from the outside, 29%. From three. And then Milicic is a guy that's, he's 6'10". He's a freak, but he can be kind of hit or miss. I've seen a lot of bewildered looks by Rick Barnes when he takes Milicic out of the game. Like, what were you doing on that play? Like, he can make a great play, but he can make a bad play. But when he's on, he is a difference maker.
By the way, that was the injured Louisville player was Rain Smith, who is Louisville's top shooter. Had just come back from an ankle injury, appeared to re-injure that ankle, had to be helped off the court. Creighton up 69-52 in the second half. Jared Stillman has arrived. We will get his temperature check. We will get his temperature check.
Do we have a latest tweet? What's the updated tweet?
I don't know, but
we had an interesting pattern of tweets that it went from very high optimism to very low pessimism.
Well, he is in the flesh, so we could ask him at the break. But here's one thing that I thought was interesting, Willie. Dan Wetzel, who is now with ESPN, had a story about the veteran coaches in the NCAA tournament. And Dan Wetzel writes that of the 8 teams seeded either first or second in this year's bracket, 5 are led by men 65 or older. Tom Izzo, Rick Pitino, Rick Barnes, Kelvin Sampson, and Bruce Pearl. I found that to be interesting, considering it's sort of a young man's game now, right? A lot of high-profile veteran coaches got out of the game with the advent of NIL, but 5 of the top 8 teams in this tournament coached by elder statesmen.
Yeah, and they've been able to roll with the times. I think that's a really interesting observation because the game has evolved. Rick Pitino is such a fascinating character. I've always been drawn to him one way or the other. He's had some complete screw-ups in his career that have cost him, but the guy is amazing to watch as coach. I first saw Rick Pitino when I was 11 years old at the Dartmouth basketball camp. He was the coach at Boston University, and he came and spoke to the camp. I was completely mesmerized. When you're a kid and then somebody comes and talks to the camp, sometimes you're completely spaced out. You're staring at the kid in front of you, you're sitting on the court, you're going, this is uncomfortable. What's this guy talking about? But he would grab you. So that's the first thing that you would notice. St. John's is playing in Providence to start the tournament. Interesting, right? Where did he make his mark as a college coach? Coaching
In
the
Providence,
Providence Friars. He took a bunch of kind of no names. One of them at the time was unknown, Billy Donovan, right? And they went to the Final Four kind of out of nowhere in that tough Big East, D-Mace, that was loaded with all of the great players in that league. He somehow got a bunch of guys that nobody had heard of, right? And next thing you know, they're winning games. He's incredible. And he's now got that same thing going at St. John's. He's got New York behind him, right? They are, quote, New York's team. They're playing at Madison Square Garden. St. John's was sort of insignificant for probably 20 years, maybe a decent season here and there. But now all of a sudden he's got that whole town behind him. It's going to be really interesting to watch them play.
Jared, let's ask Jared Stillman. He's here right
now.
now.
He walked in shaking his head.
How are you doing,
He walked
Jared?
in shaking his head. It was like, Jared,
he's going to grab a headset here. He's going to grab a headset.
I would love to hear Jared's perspective on Pitino as well after he gets done venting about this game.
We're live with Jared Stillman, an hour early.
Tough. But here's what I'll say. I think I told this story on the air the other day. So, Willie, I don't know if you remember this, but this must have been 10 years ago. And I said to you that I thought Vanderbilt should hire Bruce Pearl. And you looked at me with your nose, like were just so disappointed that I would think such a thing. Like your nose was just turned up, in disgust at the idea that Vanderbilt should hire Bruce Pearl. And I was like, who cares about the barbecues and the cheating and everything else? So when you ask about Pitino, like we're going to lose this game to Creighton and it's going to suck. I mean, it's good to be back in the tournament for the first time in forever. But I'd rather lose with this guy, Pat Kelsey, coaching, who seems like a great guy and a great coach and I think I'd rather lose with that than win with Pitino because, and again, this was when I was 25 when I said go hire Bruce Pearl. Now I'm 35. I think I've added a little perspective, over the last decade of my life. But I got to tell you, there's just a lot of scuzzy guys, really sleazy guys as far as coaches are concerned in the NCAA tournament. Whether it's like Todd Golden at Florida or Bruce Pearl or Will Wade. Will Wade's coaching McNeese State and he's already taken the NC State job. Like, seriously? And everyone's like, yeah, no, that's fine. And Pitino, and it's just so sleazy. It's just so...
And I didn't say I liked Pitino, but he's an incredible coach. But there definitely is an aura surrounding him of a bunch of yes men and a bunch of people that kind of walk around thinking that they've invented the game of basketball and that they are supposed to take over everything. There is a sleaze factor to it.
Well, and especially like being in Louisville, like it was, he walked around like a god. And after the 7th scandal, I was a little bit, at that point I was like, okay, I've seen enough. It's time to go. So, look, I'm happy for him. I find him to be one of the most disingenuous people out there. But pound for pound, like if we all had the same players, I'm taking his team to win because I think he might be the best basketball coach walking the planet. But there's the sleaze factor.
We are glad that we could get a little bit of Jared Stillman early today.
I'm
Of
just going
course,
to
he
tell
will be-
Jared, I believe that even with this injury here, that the games are so long. Louisville will have this game within 5 at some point. I don't know if they're going to win, but they're going to get close in this game.
We will see.
This game is not over.
615-737.
It's over.
1025. Jared, of course, will be here live at Boombaz at 2:00. Coming up next, Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet NHL insider, will join us for his weekly conversation. We'll do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063. The Game.
All right, we are about to talk some hockey, some Predators with Elliot Friedman, the very, very best. So let's tell you about our coverage here for the Predators, brought to you by Lee Company. Predators Ducks tonight, and yeah, they're going to have all the TVs on. I'm at Barrel House right now. They got the game, 2 or 3 different games on right now, just in the TVs here. So if you're afraid you're going to miss some games, don't worry about it. You can watch the Preds, and during the intermissions and during the timeouts, you can peek at the TV screens for sure. Lee Company. Proud sponsor of the Predators, 567-1000, area code 615. Make sure you give them a call if you need to get your air conditioning unit checked. Anytime you've got an issue and you've got a maintenance problem, Lee Company's just a phone call away, 615-567-1000, or go to leecompany.com. You can make an online appointment. That's at your business or at your home, of course. Lee Company, been in business since 1944. They do a tremendous job. We would know. We use their services at the Donick residence. Stay tuned. We've got more coming here on DVD.
D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet NHL Insider, is also with us on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Elliot Friedman, also presented by Old National Bank. Get old. Elliot, how much do Canadians pay attention to the NCAA tournament?
You know what? We do. I used to cover NCAA basketball, a lot of it. As a matter of fact, when I was in high school, and even before, I used to tape the entire NCAA tournament that was available to us in Canada, and I kind of rewatch it in the summer. But I stopped doing that. You know, when the NBA came to Toronto, it kind of ruined it for me because, one, I didn't have as much time to watch it, and two, the NBA game was so much faster, right? Like the NCAA game was slow to me. But people still fill out brackets. I still have people periodically who say to me, who should I pick in the bracket? Because they remember I broke in covering basketball, but I won't tell them because I don't want anyone betting on anything I say because I just don't watch it close enough. But we watch it up here. We like it.
So, Elliot, the GM meetings, are they still ongoing or are they done?
They're done. They ended yesterday. I'm
Okay.
back at home.
So the
in
GM
rainy
meeting.
Toronto.
All right. Oh yes, instead of beautiful Florida, the GM meetings are over, and the playoff format is a hot topic of conversation in the NHL. Gary Bettman is dug in on this playoff format as we know it right now, but there seems to be a lot of support for a change. Is there anything in your mind that can convince Gary Bettman to perhaps reconsider the playoff format as we've known it for the past several years?
Well, the one thing, Adam, is I know he's against expanded playoffs. That he's dead set against. I've had this argument with him before. He does not like the idea of adding in more teams. And I'm against him on that. I think they should, but he's a no. Where I wonder if there's some leeway, because I do think in the CBA negotiating, the players will at least bring it up, is can you change the seating in the conferences? As in, instead of having it the way it is, can you go Western Conference where Nashville is 1 versus 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, and 4, 5, etc. That's where I wonder if there's a bit of leeway. Like I got a text yesterday from a player going into yesterday's games. Dallas was number 3 in the league, and Dallas was number 3 in the league, and Colorado was number 6. And in the West, Dallas was number 2, and Colorado was number 4. And he said, like, why should these teams be playing in the first round? He said, that's a Stanley Cup final. If you can make it so that they don't play in the first round, shouldn't we be doing that? So at the very least, Adam, I can see a situation where the players say, how do you feel about going 1 to 8 in each conference instead of what we have now, but expanding the playoffs? I disagree with Bettman on this, but he's got 50 billion votes, and he is dead set against it.
So, Elliot, the Toronto Maple Leafs will be in town here in Nashville on Saturday. Give us a state of the Toronto Maple Leafs as they arrive in Nashville later this week.
All you need to know, Adam, is that a week ago they lost to Florida at home, and my Leaf-loving buddies were like, that's it. We can't win a division. We're doomed to play Tampa in the first round. We're dead. And a couple wins later, those same friends are like, we're back. We can win the division. We're 2 points back with a game in hand. We've got this. So as you can see, all is normal in Toronto.
Yes, always.
Elliot, another team that is in the midst of a run here is the St. Louis Blues, and we just saw them here.
Yeah.
And the Predators play them again on Sunday in St. Louis, and then back here again next week. So 3 matchups in 10 days. And I heard you on your podcast talking about the Blues and their momentum, and they've got a softer portion of the schedule. So first, give me your thoughts on how St. Louis has gotten it together, and then I've got a follow-up on the Predators part of this.
Well, I mean, but the thing with St. Louis is, like in 2019, Doug Armstrong was so annoyed at his team, he sent out a memo saying, "I'm willing to trade just about anybody," and Binnington got hot and they won the Stanley Cup. Like, he should do this every year. He threatened to do it again this year, kind of, and Binnington's gotten hot and they're winning again. You know, I think, you know, number one, I just think as a group, they've played a lot better. The underlying numbers since Jim Montgomery took over as head coach, the underlying numbers are very good for them. If you take a look at kind of how, I don't know if it's exactly expected goals or chances. I can't remember which one it is, but since Montgomery has taken over, their statistical numbers in terms of the way they defended are among the best in the league. And so that obviously is a major reason why they've gotten better. I do think that, you know, one of the things I heard was that with Braden Shen, when it was rumored that he might be traded, and, you know, Toronto talked about it and some other, Ottawa talked about it, I heard the players there were really galvanized by that. Like, you're not leaving, are you? So I think that between the way that Montgomery's got them playing and just a little bit of a kick in the butt, I think it's worked very well for them, Willie.
I talked to Hal Gill the other night about the Predators being finding ways to motivate themselves and playing the quote spoiler, right? They've got 2 more with St. Louis. They've got a couple with Utah, who's on the bubble. They've got a game in Columbus coming up. These are all games where you might play the card to try to make sure your team's playing their best, to say, hey, you can spoil this guy's season. Hal did not like that at all. He said for him, it was just about playing well. It was not about getting extra motivation for a team that's out of it to play the spoiler. What kind of feedback do you get from the players you talk to about that?
Well, you know what? To me, I think it's about pride. It's, you know, you're getting paid. Fans are buying money. Like, you know, fans are paying their hard-earned money to come to your games. You should, as a professional, you should put up a great performance, or the best. You're not always going to be great, but the best performance you can. Like Willie, like, you know, we all know what it's like. Well, it's never happened to me, but you go on radio and you have a bad show. You know if you have a bad show, and the next day you're like, people are listening to me. They've given me their time. I better do a better job. Like, I look at it the same way for hockey players who won't make the playoffs. Somewhere, somehow, that's one thing I always loved about Michael Jordan, is that I remember him saying once that there's somewhere tonight, there's a fan in this stadium that spent their money to watch me play, and I better deliver. And whether you were like the 70-win Bulls or you're the Predators this year who won't make the playoffs, I think you have that responsibility. And the other thing too is, I remember years ago when Tampa Bay was not very good. They were having a really rough year, and they were playing Florida, which was trying to make the playoffs. John Tortorella was coaching the Lightning, and he didn't care that the Lightning weren't very good. He wanted to beat Florida. He wanted to ruin their season. He looked at it as a source of pride that he could potentially ruin their season. And I think that to me it's a big thing. Like, you should look at it like that. And I hope the Predators do. Like, why not try to ruin somebody else's season? I would be all over that if I was a player.
Elliot, we had I saw a report, and I can't remember, forgive me for who put it out there, but it was a study of the number of penalties that have been called compared to in previous years, and it's quite a bit down.
Yes.
The power play opportunities are down.
Jason Greger was the reporter who
Yeah.
uncovered.
I
Yes.
found that very interesting anecdotally watching the Predators here, because they've been looking at this and saying they feel like there's been some games where they should have called more penalties. They're not getting as many opportunities as they feel like they should have. I'm sure all 32 teams probably feel this way a lot of the times. But in talking to some people about different theories as to why it's down, one thing that came up that I thought was intriguing, a little outside the box. It seems like there's a lot more young officials who are a little more inexperienced getting at the games, and maybe they are deferring a little bit, and maybe I think the word came up, scared maybe to call too many penalties. But give me your theory as to why you think the number of penalties have gone down, the power play opportunities.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Will. You're the first guy to say that one to me.
And this is not coming from me. This is coming from people that I've talked to as theories as to why, without any evidence.
I am going to put on my blog today that Willie Donick says the referees are scared to make penalty calls. And watch Nashville not get a power play the rest of the season.
Well, one thing that I think we can agree on, I don't know how this works, Elliot, but it seems like when you're out of the mix, and let's say it's a game like tonight where you've got two teams that are out of it, I don't know if you tend to get more inexperienced referees in that game. Is that fair to say?
I can see that. You know what, Willie? I could see that's fair. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, Utah's not out of it yet. This is a huge game for them. Sorry, you got Anaheim
tonight.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, you know what? I see that. You know, it's an interesting theory. It's an interesting theory. Like, I saw that Jason Greger wrote it this week, and I was kind of like, and I didn't realize it. I hadn't seen it. You know, I'll say this, like, I was kind of like, I better start looking at it a little bit more. You know, every night I look at it and I say, there are penalties I think they miss. I think that's normal. To look at it and say, you know what, there should have been a penalty call here, there should have been a penalty call there. But I don't know that I've looked at games and say there's 5 or 10 missed calls. You know, and I always think there's always penalties they call, and I'm like, are you serious? You haven't called much all night, and that's the one you call? So sometimes I do have those moments too. I'm still formulating my thoughts on this one, Willie. But you know what? It is interesting that you said that. I think it is an interesting theory. Like, I was just at the GM meetings, as Adam mentioned, and there are 3 officials there who were longtime officials. Don Van Massenhoven, Dan O'Halloran, and Rob Schick. And those were longtime referees, and they weren't afraid of anything. And you know what? I could see something along those lines where maybe some of the referees are a bit too deferential. It's possible, but I wouldn't say that I would agree with that 100% yet. I have to say I'm still wrapping my head around this and why it's happening.
All right, I got one more for you because I know you follow these things closely. There was a situation in the game against the Blues where early in the second period, Michael McCarron hits a guy up high, Busnevich, and it was the right call.
He got ejected, right?
He got ejected, and they called the 5-minute. They reviewed it, and they determined, yes, this is worthy of a game misconduct. And I thought it was the right call. It was unfortunate because I think McCarron saw a guy that had the puck, and suddenly he didn't have the puck, got him up high. No question about it. Later in the game, there's a very similar action where Luke Evangelista got elbowed in the jaw and went down, and they called illegal check to the head and didn't review it. It looked like the same exact type of situation where, again, you have the tool to go look at it. And if you determine it's only 2 minutes, sure, no problem. But they didn't review it. That's why I wonder what the discussions are like on when to use that.
The only thing I can think of in that particular case, and again, I didn't see it. And I'll go look at it maybe for next week and see if I change my answer. Is the only thing I would think in that particular case, Willie, is that in the McCarron play, because, as you said, the puck was involved. I bet you they wanted to look at it and make sure it wasn't in that situation. They're probably looking at it and making sure, was it late? Where maybe they were trying to make certain there was no other body contact first. Like, I didn't see it, but what it says to me, Willie, is in that case they were more sure about the Evangelista call and what it should have been, as opposed to the McCarron call and what it should have been. Now, maybe they were right or wrong in that determination, but when they don't review it, it says to me they're sure of what they saw.
Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet NHL Insider, presented by Old National Bank. Get old here on D. Mace Vingen and Donick. Elliot, great stuff as always, and we will talk to you next week.
Have you filled out the brackets, Elliot? Do you have a winner?
No, you know what? I didn't this year. I probably would have picked Auburn, but I didn't this year. I know that'll get me killed in Tennessee. I wanted to tell you guys that I have to save it for the pod, but Barry Trotz came up to me at the GM meetings and asked me a trivia question that not only stumped me, but had me unable to focus on my life for almost 15 hours.
Okay, well, there is a great teaser for the next edition of the 32 Thoughts podcast. Elliot, thank you so much. We'll chat next week.
All right, guys, take care.
Elliot Freeman on the program. Now I can't wait to hear what that trivia question is. The 32 Thoughts podcast, the second episode of the week usually drops on Fridays, if I'm not mistaken. So look for that wherever you find your podcast. One quick score update. Creighton 83, Louisville 71 with 1:12 left in the second half. So it appears that Creighton is in position to win this game. And
There's
if they
still
do
a chance.
advance,
Still a chance.
Yes, it's not over till it's over.
Yeah.
If Creighton advances, they will take on presumably Auburn in the second round. Auburn taking on Alabama State in a 1-16 matchup. Speaking of Barry Trotz, however, I was reading something on The Athletic about the Predators the other day. And when I read this about the Predators and Barry Trotz, it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And we'll discuss that next. 615-737-1025, live out at Boombahs in Murfreesboro. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingen, 1025-1063, The Game. Vingan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. D. Mace, Vingan and Donick, presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We are out live at Boombas in Murfreesboro. We will be out here through 6 o'clock. Stillman and company will be here from 2 to 6. Tomorrow, we will all be out at the Spring Hill location of Boombas. So if you missed us today, don't miss us tomorrow at the Spring Hill location of Boombas. So
Upset alert.
Just talk
Upset
to
alert.
Freeman. What's that?
Purdue 59, High Point 56, 7:19 to go. Purdue is getting what I would call the tight blank. The tight blank. Right now, you've got the classic atmosphere in a building where everybody's rooting for the underdog. Crowd's going wild. Anybody who's not there to watch Purdue is rooting for High Point. And Purdue has sort of been in the lead the whole game, kind of in control. All of a sudden now High Point's made a run. They've got 2 free throws here to cut it to 1. And Purdue is, we know, kind of feast or famine in these tournaments, right? They have been really good.
That's why I picked High Point when we did this yesterday.
Yes. So I can't believe you haven't mentioned this, Adam. Where are you?
That's why I did this.
Are you not watching this game? Let's go.
Well,
get it on.
I am. We do have one final. Creighton 89, Louisville 75.
Yeah, so Jared's like,
Creighton
thanks a lot,
advances
Willie,
to the
for the
second round,
optimism
where
and
they will-
jinxing it, because I said Louisville would cut it to 5. That
Yes.
did not happen.
Well, you know what? I'm still reeling over Americans' loss last night in the first 4, depriving us of the all-Vingan matchup, Duke and American. I'm just hoping that Duke now beats Mount St. Mary's by 50 to make up for it. So that is tomorrow. But Creighton 89, Louisville 75, final in the first round in Lexington in the South region. So just talking to Elliot Freeman. And I was reading a story on The Athletic from one of Elliot Freeman's fellow insiders, Chris Johnston of The Athletic. He was doing his regular Ask CJ mailbag. And he received a question from a reader, Justin M. What's the plan in Nashville this offseason to get this team back on the rails? And I thought that Chris Johnston's response was interesting. He writes, quote, the Predators seem to be operating in a way that suggests they are not an off-season fix or 2 away from re-entering a contention window. They spent big in free agency last July and have been paying for it ever since with an aging roster that is full of holes. GM Barry Trotz recently warned there may be some pain, in quotes, ahead while the franchise pivots to acquiring and developing more young talent, which essentially carves out the path immediately ahead. Here's the key line. While there doesn't appear to be a full-scale rebuild on the horizon, Trotz is going to be pursuing forward-thinking moves this summer that may result in a team that doesn't win as much next season. And I found that to be interesting because when I hear Barry Trotz speak weekly with Jared on Tuesdays, I hear a GM who is intending for his team to be competitive next season. And then I read Chris Johnston saying, again, quote, Trotz is going to be pursuing forward-thinking moves this summer that may result in a team that doesn't win as much next season. So, Willie, when you hear that, what do you think those quote-unquote forward-thinking moves could be?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways you can go. I have heard Barry Trotz say a lot of things. If you listen to him long enough, he is going to give you scenario A, scenario B. So if you're honing in on one thing, you could quote one thing, and then in the same interview, he could give sort of a different pathway to the same idea. So I would look at it this way. You would have to take a look at what is out there in the free agent pool and see, is that in your budget? Can you go get another top 4 defenseman on the free agent market? I'm not sure if they can do that. They do have a lot of draft picks. For example, St. Louis came in here the other day. How did they jumpstart their team? They took 2 players off of the Edmonton roster by signing them to offer sheets as restricted free agents, and those guys have hit big for St. Louis. I think that's one angle that
Philip
could be a
Broberg
forward thinking.
and Dylan Holloway.
Yeah, Holloway's had a career year. He's got over 20 goals, And Broberg has had a really good breakout year, and he's super young. He's only going to get better. So that move has worked as a home run for the Blues. And I think it's been frowned upon across the league to do that in the past. It shouldn't be. And I think Barry Trotz has the ability, the flexibility in the roster and the draft picks to try to do that if he thinks the right person is out there. So he's used the word pain a bunch from the very, very first day that he took over, where he said there's going to be some pain. It's again has to do with bridging the gap between the older roster that he has now and the younger roster that he thinks is still probably a year or two away from really seeing what you've got. Like I think Fedor Svechkov is a great example. What he is now is not what he's going to be in 2 years. But is he going to make a big jump, or is he just going to be a decent NHL player? That is the big question with a lot of these young players.
So Willie, with that being said, because listen, Barry has been upfront about what he expects from this team and the expectations. Yes, you want to win, but you understand that, listen, we may not be in a position to win right now. He said that last season, but he went out and he aggressively got some guys that he thought was going to make his team better. Now, it didn't work out the way he thought it was, but that doesn't mean you scrap the whole thing. But can you go into another off season and preach that same message and then miss the playoffs for a third year in a row? I don't think you can.
It wouldn't be a third year in a row. Next year would be a second year.
Exactly. Your second year. Yeah, second year in a row. That wouldn't land on the fan base like it did this previous season.
You're right. You have to be careful with that, especially and I don't think he has used the term thread the needle, and I think that is basically what he's trying to do, is thread the needle, is be a competitive team while you have Stamkos, Marchessault, Josi, Forsberg, those guys who are at a stage of their career where they want to win, and they've only got a certain amount of time left. They're on the back nine of their career, most of those guys. And at the same time, he knows a lot is riding on all of these young pieces that he's been talking about for a couple years, none of which have really blossomed yet. And if anything, a couple of them have gone backwards, right? We know Luke Evangelista has had a really tough year. And Zach Leroux and Fedor Svechkov, 21-year-old guys who I think have a good future. They certainly aren't the person that's going to just come in and be a game changer right away. Those guys are really rare, and those guys aren't those guys. So what do you do in the meantime to try to make the team better? The one thing we know, Barry Trotz is going to do a lot of interviews. I don't know what he did, if it was an off-the-record discussion he had with Chris Johnston, where Johnson is quoting directly from a conversation he had, or is he taking a piece of a bigger interview that Barry did either on this station or somewhere else?
So this is my question for Predators fans, and Derek touched on it a little bit. I'm not. It would be a hard sell, I think, for a lot of Predators fans if the Predators went into next season and they thought, hey, we're taking that step back. And look, when I was near the end of my time on the beat, I implored the Predators to take a step back. I said they will not get better until they allow themselves to get worse. But when you sign the contracts that Barry Trotz did in free agency, that creates expectations of a competitive team. And I'm just wondering how the Predators would sell that to fans that, hey, last season we all had high expectations. Well, the fans had high expectations. Barry Trotz did try to temper those expectations, but there were high expectations for the Predators. It didn't work out. But next year, there might be some more pain, despite the fact that we signed Steven Stamkos, among others. So that's my roundabout way of saying I'm not sure how the Predators could sell that to their fans after this season went so horribly wrong.
But I don't know that they'll have to sell that. They're going to have a lot of the same guys, right? I don't see a scenario where they don't have O'Reilly, Stamkos, Forsberg, Marcia So, Yossi, Saros, right? That's the core of your team. They're
Right.
going to be back next year. It's just a question of what the expectation level will be, not only from the Predators' perspective, but around the league. I think there's going to be automatically some skepticism that the Predators will be a bounce-back team. I think they're going to look at the year that some of these guys have had and say, is it really realistic that they're all going to jump up and bounce back to their career best? No, but look at the Blues. Like the Blues, I'm not sure if they'll make the playoffs or not, but I think you look at their top players who they've invested in, they're all having pretty good years. And when that happens, your team is a lot better. I think if UC Saros has a great year next year, if Philip Forsberg has another 40-plus goal next year, I will guarantee you that the Predators will be a lot higher in the standings. How much better? I don't know. I think that's the key. Are we talking about bouncing back and getting into the playoffs, or are we talking about getting to the next level of winning playoff series?
One texter says, I don't know what the Preds are going to do, but I'm officially tired of talking about it. This is not the NFL. Another year of this, people will check out quickly. And that is a fear, especially as the texter says, look, the NFL people will say, the Titans, we know they stink right now, but people are going to watch the games. Hockey doesn't necessarily have that built in, hey, I'm going to watch no matter what kind of thing. So, I do wonder here, what the Predators' plan is in the offseason, and if they forge a path where the playoffs are not an expectation next season.
When you say forge a path, what would they do? What would be an example of how you would forge a path to take a step back?
That is a good question. I mean, the only thing that I can think of is it would have to involve one of the core players not wanting to be a part of the solution, I guess would be my initial response.
Okay, but at least on the record, Barry Trotz says he's gone to those guys and said,
yes,
if you don't want to be here, I'll try to move you. Now, maybe that got tabled to the offseason, but my gut feeling is that's not going to be the case. Right?
Well, we can continue.
I know this will be something I'm sure we get into throughout the offseason once it gets started. But when you say take a step back, I'm not sure what people would have in mind with that, with some of the no trade clauses, et cetera, that you would have to move in order to step back. And he just elected not to step back with some of the guys he could have traded who are under contract for next year, right? O'Reilly, Sissons, and McCarron, to name three.
615-737-1025. We have some reaction to this on our text line, so we will continue to take it. 615-737-1025. We are live out at Boom Buzz in Murfreesboro. You can come hang out with us until 6 o'clock. Some quick score updates around the NCAA tournament. Purdue up 66-58 on High Point with 2:55 left in the second half. Wisconsin up 46-38 on Montana with 17 minutes left in the second half. Houston, the number one seeded Houston, 42-20 over SIU Edwardsville. That's a mouthful. SIU Edwardsville.
We need to really talk about the name of that school. I really feel like there needs to be a name change. That's too much. There's too many letters.
Yes, we do need to have a discussion with that. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
do you shake things up outside of firing the coach? How do you shake things up as far as the roster is concerned? Would you go to one of your guys if you felt like there was an opportunity and ask them to waive a no movement clause? How do you feel about that?
100%. 100%. I owe that to the team. I owe that to our staff. I owe it to the ownership, and I owe it to our fans. So if there is something, if someone that said, hey, you think about this, or if I propose something, if it made some sense, I would have no problem going to the player and say, listen, it's not working. Would you consider this? And there's nothing wrong with asking that. They can say no, and some players have done that. And some players would say, yeah, I think it'll work. So all that being said, if it comes up, I have no problem asking.
It was Barry Trotz with Jared Stillman not too long ago. Stillman and Company coming up next right here from Boombas in Murfreesboro. And a reminder that we will all be out at the Boombas location in Spring Hill tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So come enjoy award-winning pizza, handcrafted beverages, win prizes, and watch the basketball games with us. So we do have a lot of reaction, and I do think this is a conversation that we can have here, and we should continue it tomorrow, because it really has generated a lot of discussion. One texter says, when you're trying to win, you make moves to win and not rebuild. Taking a step back isn't an option with the roster moves made. So Barry Trotz needs to step forward and not do both. And I think what I was trying to articulate, Willie, I don't know if I did it as well as I could have in the previous segment, was I think that, not to say that we can excuse this season, but we play the clip coming back from break, and there's the sound from you, Ellie. Like, is this an example of a season where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong? And in a lot of ways, it was. So sometimes those seasons happen. You dust yourself off, and you try to rectify it the following season. I guess my question is, are Predators fans in a place where if next season, maybe it's not as bad as this one, but the Predators aren't a competitive team, how will they accept that? Will they accept that? Because when was the last time this team missed the postseason 2 years in a row? It was right before they fired Barry Trotz, correct?
Correct.
As coach?
The shortened year of 2013, and then the following year, 13-14.
Right.
So it hasn't happened very often, really, since before the first lockout, the lockout where the season wasn't played. So when you think about that, they've been about as consistent as any franchise, right up there in terms of being in the postseason the highest percentage of the time. I'd say it's probably in the top 10 of the league.
So there might be some Predators fans out there who can excuse this season because it's been a long time since the Predators have been in this position where they're missing the playoffs more often than not. But I don't know how it will go if this happens next season. Again, I'm not expecting, the shooting percentage to be as historically low as it was at points this season.
And still is.
But I think, and still is, but I do think that Predators fans say, okay, this was your one mistake. This was your one blip on the radar. Things better be the way that we are accustomed to them being starting next season. So I'm just curious how Predators fans would react if that wasn't the case.
Well, I think we know how they would react. I mean, this is a passionate fan base that's seen a lot of success. They've got a standard. And so I think there would be naturally a lot of disappointment, criticism, etc., if there's not much of a bounce back. And so only time is going to tell. I don't think it's as simple as saying they've just flat out been unlucky this year. However, they have been very unlucky. Philip Forsberg, I was looking, he now has hit the post 18 times this year, including 2 the other night. And that was a game where if he scores on one or both of those, it's a totally different game. And you can go through several examples. And when a team has got the good mojo going, it seems like those goals go in. Last year, probably they had way more than they didn't in that department. But it's not that simple that's going to get you alone where you want to go. They do have to make some important key adjustments to the roster, and they've got to, I think, also assess how are they going to try to play? There was some interesting comments, a commentary about the training camp, right? Why did they get off to a good start? I think there's a lot of things traced back to that as to how they dug themselves a hole. So there's a lot of things to assess.
Let's wrap up the show by taking a look at the NCAA tournament scoreboard. And just a reminder that all of our NCAA tournament updates are presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by TheNewCumberland.com, Twin Peaks, and Bet365. Purdue looks like it's going to survive that upset attempt by High Point. 75-63 Purdue with 25 seconds remaining in the second half. Wisconsin, a 3 seed, a 59-47 lead against Montana. 12:38 remaining in the second half. Halftime, Houston 52, SIU Edwardsville 24. So we won't have to say SIU Edwardsville that many more times. I'm having to make sure I enunciate to make sure I don't trip over my tongue as I say that. You know, the one final, of course, sorry, Jared, Creighton 89, Louisville 75. The next round of games, Auburn taking on Alabama State, tip off at 1:50. McNeese, coached by future NC State coach Will Wade, against Clemson, coming up at 2:15. VCU and BYU at 3:05.
Well, I'm looking forward to all these games, man. I'm sure we will get some barn burners, some last second heroics. It started early with the Alabama State game in St. Francis, and it seems like it's going to continue. Whether it be buzzer beaters or teams coming back from large deficits. This is what March Madness is about. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of days of basketball. This may be, and tell me if y'all agree, outside of probably the first day or opening week of the NFL season, this may be the best time of year when it comes
these
to sports.
2 days, Thursday, Friday,
exactly.
Wall-to-wall basketball, first round of the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
It's my favorite sporting time of the year.
I enjoy this time of year. Really do.
I'm reminded of all of the times I would watch the games on my laptop in class instead of paying attention in college.
I think you're speaking about the language of about 80% of the college students right around this time.
Absolutely. And you don't have to sneak and watch these games. You can watch them with us. You can come join Jared here at Boomba's in Murfreesboro. We'll be out here until 6 o'clock. Tomorrow from 9 to 6, we will be at the Boomba's location in Spring Hill watching all of the NCAA tournament action. We will all be out there. Stillman & Company coming up next, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful Thursday. First day of March Madness officially. Peace.